From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you are with us tonight, Tuesday night. What is it, February 23rd, 2021. Glad you're with us. We will be having a live discussion tonight talking about vouchers, the voucher program. So this is somewhat controversial, of course. People that are very passionate on both sides. We have two people on tonight that agree. They support the voucher program. Obviously, there's another side. We've had the other side on before, and if you are part of the other side, I encourage you to call in. But tonight we're going to be hearing from two guests. Again, doesn't mean you can't call in. We have Shaka Mitchell. He is with Tennessee State Director for the American Federation for Children, and he can explain what that is. And then Braden Boucek, Vice President of Legal Affairs with the Beacon Center of Tennessee. Again, both supportive of the voucher program. And let's just, first of all, update where we are right now. So, of course, the legislature passed this essentially for two counties, right? Davidson and Shelby. Those counties did not like that. They've taken it to court. And where do things stand right now? And who wants to take that?
Sure, I'm happy to tackle the legal issue there, Ben. First off, let me clarify. It's not that the people of Shelby County and the people of Davidson County didn't like it. It's that their elected officials didn't like it. But there is widespread interest from actual parents with children trapped in failing schools in the utilization of these programs in both localities. So this is a program of intense interest to individuals in both Shelby and Davidson. To your question about where the case currently stands, it is the Supreme Court of our state just recently agreed to accept review of the lower court's rulings. And we're very excited and optimistic about taking this case forward and getting the program online. I'm sure I'm not saying anything that parents out there are already thinking, but we need to get schools up and running, and school choice is a big part of that.
School choice and vouchers. And all right, so let me ask this. You said the people of those two counties wanted that, and there may be people that wanted it. Certainly there are people that didn't. And it seemed odd when this was passed that it was just two counties. That was one of the big issues, that it wasn't all counties in Tennessee, it was just two counties. And it was understood when this passed that some counties, some people that represented some counties voted for it only if their county weren't required to do it. Is that true? And if it's so great, why not do it for all Tennessee counties? Why pick out two?
Hi, Ben. It's a pilot program. So the idea was to let's evaluate the competitiveness of this program once we get a small sample size, and then we can make decisions about expanding it from there. And given the fact that it was a pilot program, it only made sense to start with the biggest and most historically underperforming school districts in the state, and that's Shelby County and Davidson County. So that's why we started there. This is just me speaking from a personal perspective. I'm a parent in Williamson County, which is, widely recognized to be the best school district in the state. And nothing would make me happier than if I had the educational savings account program at my disposal that only parents in Shelby and Davidson have access to.
So let's define it.
Yeah,
Shaka. Well, let's define what it means. So exactly what did pass? When I say vouchers and educational savings accounts, and he says he would love to have it in Williamson County, tell us exactly what would this mean? Let's say it does get passed. What does it mean?
Yeah, so it's an education savings account, and it is different from a voucher. That a voucher. If you think about a voucher is like if you received a gift card that you could only use at one store, right? And that's fantastic if you like that one store. An education savings account gives a parent more flexibility to use the state education dollars, which is about $7,000 per pupil, on a range of education items, and that includes tuition. But if there's money left over, parents could also use that on technology. That's a huge deal right now. It has been a huge deal for the past year. Could use it on tutoring, on supplemental services, test prep, a whole range of things. So what the legislature passed was this education savings account, an ESA for short, And to be eligible, you've got to be a lower income family in one of these, with a student in one of these two districts. But as Braden said, it's a pilot program, so it's open to 5,000 students in the first year, but that can grow year over year if there's demand. And again, it's really designed to give parents who currently feel stuck, who don't have the means, to give them an option to access something better.
So $7,000. Currently, the state gives, let's say it's going to be Nashville, Davidson County. Davidson County gets $7,000 for every pupil from the state to help educate that pupil, right?
That's right.
Is that okay? So then,
well, let me interject there.
And so what this would allow, you would give it to the parent. The parent can do whatever they want with it, but it doesn't then go to the school district. So the school district loses that money. The parent gets that money. And what do you envision the parent doing with $7,000? What do they do? What is it private school or charters? Charters don't cost money. What does a parent do with $7,000?
Right. So a charter school. Well, Braden, do you want to clarify on the amount real quick?
Yeah, I do want to jump in on the amount there, Ben. The parent does not get to take the full amount of the cost of educating the child. So it's important to emphasize that if the cost of educating the child is $12,000 in Davidson County, the parent does not get the full $12,000. It's more like $7,000 is the match, or is the maximum that a parent can receive. So the school district will actually net cash because they're losing the cost of educating the child while keeping a portion of the money of the funds that were set aside for that child. Now let me hand it off to Shaka, who you can address the second part of the question.
Yeah, so Ben, so yes, good question. How might a parent, and I know there's probably parents tuning into this, so how might a parent use this? Well, the dollars would go into an online account, and so it's we think pretty secure. And then a parent could use that money for tuition at approved, participating private schools. And then again, if there's money left over, you could use it for other things. And, you might be surprised that just how far that $7,000 will go. And this is something I hear a lot. People, when they think about a private school, we think about schools that have a really big price tag, right? Well, two things. One, that's not the majority of schools. The majority of schools, frankly, are schools that have much more modest tuitions. Think about all the Catholic schools in the area. Those tuitions are more like $8,000 to $10,000, $11,000. Also, most private schools provide some kind of financial aid. So that $7,000 can make a huge difference. If you're a family of 5 and you make under $75,000, you don't have an extra $7K just laying around that you can spend and put towards tuition. So this, we really believe, will go a long way.
So 7,000.
And I know.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
I know at least one school that more than covers the cost of tuition, books, and application.
And there are many schools where it doesn't cover. It wouldn't come close.
Sure. Yeah, and there are schools that are going to be more expensive. But again, I think what we need to figure out and appreciate is that when parents are extended this lifeline, and this is what we've seen in other states, parents will make a way, right? Most parents report that they will drive over 30 minutes, for instance, to get their kid to the school of their choice, right? So as much as it's nice if you can, here in the Nashville area, move into a zip code that's got a great neighborhood school. But if you are a family that is a lower income family, if you don't have the means to vote with your moving company, what are you going to do? That $7,000 can get you a long way. I mean, it's a little bit, you think about college tuition, very few people pay full freight at Vanderbilt, right? We are happy to give Pell Grants that don't even cover, 25% of the tuition there. And we're happy to give those to people, and nobody says boo about it. So this is really extending that to the K-12 sector.
The concern on the part of, I guess, critics would be that it's really dismantling public education. That this is money, again, that was going to go to public schools that is being taken away. At least the $7,000 is taken away from public schools. I guess there's some portion that still follows the student, but there's money taken away from public schools. It's given to the parents. And then there's some who would say there's that limbo, which you addressed. Okay, maybe it will cover some school, maybe it'll help them get in somewhere. But to those who say this really harms public education. And yes, public education is struggling, but it's struggling perhaps in part because of things like this, where money is just taken away from public education over and over again. What do you say to that?
Sure, let me go first. Ben, schools exist to educate kids. Kids don't exist to fund schools. And that's the important and fundamental point that everyone needs to consider in response to this takes money out of schools. The only way parents, or the only way the schools are going to be losing these money is if an individual parent has said, this school is no longer doing an adequate job educating my child and I'm exercising my right to exit. So if the only way that we can fund schools, and and I'll let Shaka talk a little bit about the reality of what effect this has on school funding, but if the only way we can fund schools is by taking away the option for parents to leave, then we've got our priorities completely 100% upside down. Schools are for kids, not vice versa. And we've made this point in our litigation throughout, but it's a point that bears repeating. Students are not mere funding units for the public sector monopoly. They exist to serve us and not the other way around. But, at this point in time, I want to hand it off to Shaka here because I'm sure he has a lot he wants to say about what the actual reality of what school choice does to school funding in public schools, because the reality paints a completely different picture.
Yeah, in some ways, I mean, there's lots of things that we could say about this funding question. I think one thing that we really try to do at our organization, American Federation for Children, is we're interested in talking about how kids are doing. That's our first priority. We are less interested in talking about whether or not an institution has got, a glut of resources. Metro Nashville Public Schools has received $123 million worth of federal funds in CARES Act funds. And they've been closed by and large since March, right? So you want to talk about where money is going and who is or isn't flush with cash. You can talk about that, or we can talk about, hey, let's just do what's in the best interest of students. Something that a lot of people may not realize is that despite Nashville's growth in recent years, by population, the number of kids in the school district has actually decreased over time, right? People who can are already leaving. And when they move to another county, they take 100% of the, those per pupil dollars, and they take them to one of the surrounding counties. And those other counties are happy to have them. That's a real loss, but we don't stop people from moving, right? We encourage families to do what's in the best interest of their kids. This is another avenue to do that.
Okay. All right. That kind of sets the table. We have several calls. And so I want to get to the calls here. We have Tracy and Mike. Let's just start with Tracy. Hello, Tracy.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. Go right ahead.
Yes, my name is Tracy. And what I'd like to ask the question is, out of the 90, we have 95 counties. And what I don't understand, I guess, is why we would only pick Davidson and Shelby. If you want a sample, then you need to sample more than 2 counties. Now, I'm an educator in Metro Nashville, Davidson County, and I don't understand because we're dealing with apples and oranges. We educate students. Some schools have students that speak 60 different languages. So that's not going to be replicated in the smaller counties where you only have English-speaking students. These students are expected to take the same test after they've been here after a certain amount of time. They're not going to score the same way. They're not going to score the same way as a student that has been born here. The diversity does matter, and we've got to take that into consideration. And I understand about the choice, but the things that you're doing, how we're targeting 2 counties out of the 95, something is wrong with that.
Okay.
Something is wrong with that, where those 2 counties that are the most brown in the state of Tennessee are targeted. That's a problem.
Right. Okay, I appreciate that call. That articulates pretty well a concern a lot of people have. 2 counties, heavily minority counties, multi-language speaking situations. But you heard her question. It's similar to what I ask, but she's asking it as well, and I'll let both of you respond. Shaka, what do you want to say?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and especially, right, these two things are related. What Tracy asked about why these 2 counties, and then also how might this program take the diversity of the student body, the student population into account. The 2 things are related, and let me be clear. There are a lot of fine educators who are doing their level best to get students up to grade level, to work with, new American students, new to America students, students from a range of different, with a range of different exceptional needs. The reality, though, and if we really care, and I do, if we really care, especially about Black and brown children, about students who have been disproportionately affected by things like the COVID pandemic recently, if we look at how students are doing in Nashville and Memphis, they are doing worse in Nashville and Memphis than anywhere else in the state. So I think the real question is, how do we move with urgency, right? Because we had court decisions from the 60s and 70s talking about how we were going to address students of color in Nashville. And what? Well, I'm still waiting, right? We're still busing kids all over the district to no avail. Parents are tired of waiting. This is something that we can do now. And I think it's that sense of urgency that we, really felt back in 2019 when this law passed. Braden, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that.
Well, just, and I appreciate her passion and concern too. I think I speak for both of us. When we're not anti-public school, we're for more school options. And the public schools work great for a lot of people. It's true in Nashville, and it's true in Davidson or Shelby County as well. But to directly answer the caller's question, the reason why the state started with those 2 counties is because it's a pilot program, and those are the 2 most historically underperforming school districts. It would have been foolish to have started in any other 2 counties. I mean, ultimately, the state has the paramount duty to see that the parents and children are offered with an adequate education. It's actually a constitutional mandate in Tennessee. And the public school systems in those 2 counties in particular have chronically underperformed. And so, the state is going to discharge its constitutional obligation to see that these children have an educational lifeline. That was the place to start. I look forward to the program coming online so that we can see the results and start discussing about expanding this to other places and school districts. And, again, I'll express to the caller, I don't live in Shelby or Davidson County, but I really, really wish we had the program in the county in which I live.
So you say it made sense to start with these 2, Davidson and Shelby, and yet there are all these reports that there were lawmakers who wouldn't vote for this unless their county was taken out of it. Is that true? I mean, they didn't. They're like, yeah, I support vouchers. I'm all for vouchers or savings accounts or whatever you call it, but I don't want it in my county. I'll vote for it in Davidson and Shelby, but not in my county. And so that also, I think, concerns people.
And I think it should, Ben, honestly. And I know of a legislator, and y'all can go back and check the records, right? I know of a legislator who, expressed that. And I think you may have even covered it. I know some news outlets covered it. I also know of some legislators, especially in the Chattanooga area, who looked up only after it was done, because it was, as legislation tends to be, it was a flurry of action. There's amendments flying around and all sorts of different things. It's hard to follow, even for them sometimes. And there were some members from the Chattanooga delegate in particular who looked up after it was all said and done and went, wait a minute, Chattanooga got left out? How did Hamilton County get left out? And frankly, we're frustrated that it got left out. So I think there was a lot of, as they say, horse trading, happening in the final days. Again, I think that there's the there's the temptation to want the perfect program, but I think in this case, the problem is so big. We are talking about in between Nashville and Memphis, only about 1 in 5 students being on grade level. 1 in 5 students out of 200,000 kids. So we need to start taking small bites out of this elephant as soon as possible.
All right, we have to take a break.
Ben,
Well, go ahead. You can say it, then we'll go to break. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, as lawyers, it's very easy to cherry pick from the legislative record. I see people doing it all the time, and it's not always representative. Increasingly, judges just throw their hands up because one side can find legislative history that says this, and one side finds legislative history that says the exact opposite. There's a wide diversity of view up on the Hill, and if one were so inclined, one could find opposition to school choice rooted in things that were frankly invidious discrimination, and that's not emblematic of opposition as a whole, and it's not helpful to framing the entire debate, which boils down to whether or not this makes sense for parents trapped in the worst school districts in the state.
All right, we will take a break. Ann and Mike, hold on the line. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.